Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. Everybody's favorite history host on Twitch, this guy, because I'm pretty much the only one that actually does history this way anyway, so even if I'm the one that you hate the most, I'm still technically your favorite. Win by default. I'll take it because it's technically correct. DCI, good to see you. Tad, how's it going, my friend? Calm Heart, good to see you. It's been a bit. I'm glad to see you back around. Hope that the world is treating everybody the right way. Today has been an interesting and long day. I've had a whole bunch of work, but I got some things accomplished and didn't get... I don't know how much I got accomplished. I feel about today. Like, you ever get through a day where you know that you were busy and you kind of look back at it and you go, what did I actually accomplish today? And I can say a few things like I got 2 grades closed out, or two courses closed out, and I'm like, okay, that's a thing. 3 more, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So it's that end of the year sort of stuff where everything is just kind of running in together. And it'll all be okay. You know, by the end of this week, all of my classes will be closed out. Next week, they will open up classes for next semester, and I'll start tinkering around with those. And then at the end of next week, I will be free. Dobby will be a free elf for months. And I've got to figure out how to productively use my summer because, you know, who sits around and just relaxes? No, when you're already burned out, you're just supposed to keep at it, right? Because if you push through the burnout, you get to the other side and you find that second reserve of energy, right? That's how it's supposed to go, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, what?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Fidelia, 21 months. Holy moly. Thank you so much. And welcome back to being Spartacus. It's good to see you, as always. I know that you like to do the lurk thing, and that's absolutely fine, but it's always good to see you pop up. And I hope that you and the family are doing well, and hope that things are going swimmingly in your world. What's up, Tuna? Good to see you. How's things? I was vicariously both excited and jealous to see that you had booked your tickets to DC. I actually brought that up to my wife today. I was like, dang it, Tuna gets to go to DC. I was kind of I was grousing about that a little bit. But I'm glad you're getting to go, my friend. You deserve a vacation. I know that you have an incredibly hectic schedule and a lot of stuff going on in your world. So just run away. You know, that's so much easier than it sounds. And I'll remind everybody that among all of the places in the world where doing something like
I'm Spartacus!
Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Green Herring, I know that you live right next to DC, and I am jealous of that. But thank you so much for christening our Twitch baby of subscription with 9 months of support. Thank you so much, my friend. I let everybody name the Twitch baby, and then I immediately forget it because I'm obviously a deadbeat dad. But thank you for the support, and I appreciate all of the stuff that you do in chat and hanging around and offering good questions and providing good content and stuff like that. So, Killed the Preacher, what's up, man? Good to see you. I was going to mention that in all of the countries where they have done hitchhiking robot experiments, the only place that the hitchhiking robot has been thoroughly destroyed is the United States. So picking up a knapsack and just running off into the blue only works if you've got wizards with you, and then it doesn't work very well. I might end up with my finger bitten off. You know, I guess I could also end up hanging out with the elves for the rest of my life, which would be pretty cool if I'm just being honest. But, you know, it's a 50-50 shot there. I mean, I guess Frodo did get to go to the Undying Lands, and that's pretty cool for a mortal. I don't know if I'd want to live forever, though. Maybe in the Undying Lands, because nothing also withers or gets old. So, like, eternal youth would be cool. That's the thing that a lot of people get hung up on. Like, they say, I want eternal life, and then they forget eternal youth. There's actually a really great Egyptian myth about that, where a priest summons Ptah, the god of knowledge, and asks for a boon as a reward for letting Ptah go. And Ptah allows him eternal life, but not eternal youth, and he eventually turns into a cricket because he shrivels up.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. Good gracious.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
So many Spartaci. What is this?
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. Love
I'm
cuppers.
Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
So many Spartaci.
Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus!
We've got two more.
I'm Spartacus! 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 Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus!
Love cuppers. Thank you so much for 5 tier 1 gifted subs. That's crazy and amazing. So Snowlock, just another guy named Harry, my lovely wife Brittany, Unreal Brian, and Blank Page. Welcome to being Spartacus by lieu of untamed and unrestrained generosity of Love Cuppers. Thank you so much, my friend. Welcome in. I rarely get greeted by someone so lovingly the first time that they show up to stream, but thank you so much. I hope that you're having a good one. That's a great way to kind of make an entrance, if I don't say so myself. Or I guess I do say so myself, because I just did say so. But thank you so much. It's very, very generous, very kind of you. With great power comes great responsibility. Yes, and the great responsibility is to properly nurture our lovely emotes, like the chonky horse and the puppy head pat, right? And the OG adventure hat. DCI Banks.
I'm Spartacus!
Holy moly.
I'm Spartacus!
We're just gonna blow up now. We're just blowing it up.
I'm Spartacus! 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 Spartacus!
Holy moly.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. That's my favorite one.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus!
Spartaci? Yeah, I know. I'm a nerd.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus!
Tad. Thank you, my friend. So generous. All of the all of the Spartaci. This is a great way to start a stream. I can't really complain about this at all. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. So, 8 p.m. If you're hiding back there in the background, congratulations. I don't see you in the user list, but 8 p.m. is a great person to give one to. Diadems, frequent. Hey, Miss Meliss, 767. DCI Banks gave one to Visual Nomad, too. All the good people. Welcome in. Anyone Cryo vibes with is someone I'll support. Hey, heck yeah, man. Absolutely. Cryo is great. So, way back when I first started, it was tough for a tiny little guy that is trying to talk history and be a little bit open about the academic world. And I got a lot of support from Cryo and her mod, Crush Builds, who's another great streamer, and people like David Peterson and people like Steve Sketches, who brought a lot of eyeballs in my direction. Cryo was infinitely helpful with super positive energy, and I probably would not be streaming if it weren't for her support. And I got super lucky to meet Cryo back at Dragon Con last year, and just had a delightful time sitting outside around a fire pit and eating gummy worms, sour gummy worms, to the point that we were both probably pretty sick about it. But yeah, Cryo is an amazing streamer. Let me make sure that I said hello to everybody, because we've kind of hit the ground running here. Maddie, good to see you. I said that you came in, but I didn't say hello. Diadems, welcome in. Good to see you. Yeah, we're spouting Spartaci everywhere. Just... So yeah, welcome everybody to Adventures in History, which is a stream where we talk about history stuff, and we make fun out of history, and sometimes we just make fun of history. And now Green Herring is just...
I'm Spartacus.
You all.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I thought I could start the stream.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm
Welcome to the subs only stream.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Green Herring, my friend. Thank you.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Rank 3 things.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
All right. Green Herring, thank you so much for 5 more. That's a lot. I appreciate you all. Rombody Cobb, Jim Kadechi, Uncle Bill, Lyos Van Huen, Sagiri, welcome to being Spartaci, from the generosity and beneficence of Green Herring. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Subs Only stream. Yeah, let's send this man to DC. I appreciate that, you all. I don't do Twitch for the money stuff. I appreciate the money stuff. I'm not going to lie, but I do spend all of that money that I get from Twitch trying to make better content. I don't use Twitch money for fun. Like I don't buy groceries with this. So all of the money that I collect from stream, I use to do stuff like pay for the little Adventure Shane down in the corner, or pay Ali Briggs art for our Chonky Horse emote, or stuff like that. So I try to give back to you all everything that you give to me, and I really do sort of consider that to be kind of I don't know. Like I get weirded out taking gifts in the first place. I'm not necessarily the world's best gift receiver, so I really do appreciate you all. Thank you so much for all of your support. And this kind of blows me away. I was honestly not really sure how tonight was going to go. Today was kind of like, again, just kind of a bleh kind of day, but you all are awesome, and I appreciate the time that you all are willing to spend with me, because I know that you could go do pretty much anything else in the world, and you decide to kind of hang out with a guy that's going to sit here for another hour and a half and talk about some history junk, right? So I really do appreciate you all's support. Not just the stuff tonight, but everything that everybody's done for the last 3 years, because this is right around the time of when I first started streaming back about 3 years ago. And I never...
You shall have camels, horses,
Frank, thanks, man.
escort, provisions,
Desert vehicles and tanks.
You're welcome.
I never really thought it would get this far. I never thought that I would have 220 episodes of historical stuff to claim under the belt. But you all rock, and I'll do it as long as I've still got gas in the tank, because I don't like gatekeeping knowledge, and I really don't. I don't like the idea that history has to be boring. It really should be fun, and that's kind of why I'm here. So you all are awesome. Thanks very much. Now, this is a viewer request night, and it's fitting that you all are so generous on what is sort of like your time, right? What's up, Lumpy? Good to see you, my friend. So the way that we pick viewer requests,
You shall have camels,
Lumpy.
horses, an armed
Thank you, my
escort,
friend.
provisions, desert vehicles, and tanks. You're welcome.
Lumpy is good people, like genuinely good people. You all are good people. So anyway, we picked Darwin. This was the result of a poll. He struggled, and he was the fittest of the candidates. So, new all-time record. That was the largest hype train I've ever had. 17 subs and 102 bits. You all are freaking amazing. Friggin' amazing. So there we go. Noger, I see you in there. Good to see you, my friend. Anyway, we're going to talk about Darwin, because I think that he's an interesting guy. And it's not just...
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Tuna. Is that actually Will Wheaton?
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus!
Tuna. I always appreciate the somewhat random and appreciative gift sub thing there that you do. I think at one point... I can't remember who the other person was. It was like maybe Amaranth that you gave a gift sub to or something. I can't remember. Oh, it was Mia. That's right. Dude, if Will Wheaton shows up in the stream, I'm gonna owe you like a dinner or something, or like a 6-pack or something. I don't know. But anyway, Darwin is a cool guy. He has an interesting life, and it's not just that book that everybody got mad about. So let's kind of launch in to Darwin's life now that we're 20 minutes onto the stream. We're just a little bit tardy getting started, right? Okay, so let's begin with... who are Darwin's parents? So we're going to start with his dad. And here's his dad. This is One, Robert Darwin. Uncle Bill, good to see you. Robert Darwin. He was a physician, and specifically here, a physician that had started very, very young and got into a bit of a tiff with another physician in the region of Shrewsbury, and ended up running the other doctor out of town. And anyway, so he was a very successful physician that had a lot of patients, and unfortunately didn't have a lot of patience, just had patience. Definitely did not have patience with his son, but did have lots of patience. I've seen photos of Shrewsbury and that sort of region, and it does look like somewhere that I would feel like I would like to visit.
Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
What are we doing
I'm
now?
Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! Spartacus!
Tuna. What? Oh, that's the real one. Okay. All right. So, Robert Darwin was a very well-respected physician and had a very good name in the community, and made quite a bit of money for himself.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. So many Spartaci. Good gracious. Cave Geek.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. Cave Geek, thank you so much, my friend. Got to do some shout outs. I've got all these people here, and they've been very nice, and I feel like I should give shout outs to people. We've got Cave Geek, who just gave a sub. Cave Geek is an artist and crafter and naturalist, since we're talking about naturalists, and streams games as well. And he's got a good sense of humor, and I appreciate his views of the world. So go follow Cave Geek. And we also have a bunch of other people who I can't remember that are here. Oh, we got Lumpy Dragon Potato, who is building a Minecraft world that is based on high fantasy and video game stuff, and talks a lot of sense while he's building. It'll make you smarter. You should go give him a follow. We've got the Nogre in the room. Nogre Zero is a philosopher who reads academic papers, and before you go, holy crap, I don't care about that at all. You really should, because when Nogre reads them, he explains them in common language that even peons like me can understand. So, there we go. I have seen Master and Commander with Russell Crowe. I do also think it was a quite good film. I was hoping that there would be more sequels, because that's actually based off a series of books that I enjoyed quite a bit, and they never really came around to it. And Master and Commander is not actually the first book in that series, so I appreciate the historical setting. My favorite scene in that whole movie is when they're at the dinner table, and Russell Crowe asks Paul Bettany's character which weevil he would choose, and Bettany, of course, points at the largest one, and then he goes, "Oh no, you must always pick the lesser of two weevils," which I just absolutely love. The Patrick O'Brien books, right? I'll say this: they're very dense, and they have a lot of detail that is typical of sort of high historical British-esque fiction. So you have to give them a little bit. You have to give them a little bit of leeway. Don't just read the first chapter and go, "This sucks, I hate it." You got to let it grow on you a little bit. It's not necessarily the most easily approachable set of books, but they're good. Yeah, they're kind of old fashioned reading. Maddie's giving good descriptions here. Your fave is when they're at the Galapagos and they convey the feeling of discovery that these. Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely a great scene as well. There's so many good scenes in that. There's a reason why it won best cinematography at the Oscars. Yeah, they mushed together a whole bunch of different stuff to get that one movie. I have heard being like very, very loose that there are people interested in either making a reboot of the series and starting with the first book, or maybe building on top of the same cast and bringing the same cast back and doing one of the much later books when it would fit chronologically with their age. So that'd be really cool. Le Mort d'Arthur, that's great. Yeah, if you're struggling through Le Mort d'Arthur and you're making it, you're going to make it through Master and Commander. Yeah, you're going to be okay. Yeah, cheers, Gordon Lightfoot, 84. I really appreciate his music too. So they want to bring it back and be a mini series. I see. I would watch it because I'm interested. I like ships. What about Darwin's mom? This is Susanna Wedgwood. And the Wedgwood family was particularly popular and wealthy because of several very good investments about a century before. And around the time that she was growing up, they were making a lot of money in fine pottery and crafts that they were manufacturing. So, yeah, Wedgwood pottery, exactly, that's it. So there's a lot of money coming into the Wedgwood family. Now, the marriage between Robert and Susanna is actually arranged by Erasmus Darwin and Susanna's father. Erasmus Darwin is Charles's grandfather, and he sort of plays a role in the larger story as well. This guy was kind of a go-getter. He was a very open and very active abolitionist. This is back in the late 1700s when England was still running colonies that had slaves and still participating in the slave trade. He was a very colorful individual. Absolutely. And he did a lot of stuff that sort of hints at evolution that Charles grew up reading and grew up exposed to. So he's sort of the originator of that. But when we get to the two of them getting married, they get married, and of course, pretty soon after that, they're going to... that's the wrong button. This is the wrong button. This is their home, and it is referred to as the Mount. Yes, they were Unitarians, not utilitarians. So Unitarians are a specific type of religion where the groups claim to be Christian, and they would say that they're Christian, but they deny the Trinitarian view of Christ. They say that God is one, and they deny that Christ was fully God in the same way that God is God. And it gets very deep into the religious situation here. Suffice to say that the majority of England around that area was Anglican, and Unitarians did not necessarily fit in very well, and this is actually going to play a little bit of a role in the way that Darwin sorts of thinks about the world. Instead of kind of a more organized liturgical what we might call ecclesiastical sort of view of the world that was very prominent in the Anglican Church, which he starts going to later on a little bit. The Unitarian view is much more, well, like Maddie said, super open. I feel like I should just sort of turn the floor over to Maddie in the chat. Just go for it, and I'll just make committal noises along the way. Like, yeah, that's right. Like, what? No, you're fine. It's great. I'm super glad that people are excited. It gets me fired up when we have that rapport where I know what I'm talking about, and I know that you know what I'm talking about, and we could talk about stuff on a level. Because just to be completely honest, there are not many people in the world that I could sit down and have this conversation with the way that we could kind of bounce off each other, right? Please don't stop. It's great, and that was not meant like some backhanded compliment kind of thing. That was just like, I'm really glad that we've got other people in here that can throw stuff, because I'm liable to not say something in the effect of trying to skim over stuff or forget something that's important, because I'm just a human, right? Journey of the Beagle. Yeah, you mean the actual, like, the journals that he wrote after he got back? I have not read those. I have not. Yeah, so I have not read those, or the one that Fitzroy, the captain, wrote either. So I have not read any of those. I don't know why I haven't read any of those, but I haven't remembered any, or haven't read any of those. So Charles was born in 1809, and he was the fifth of 6 children. He had 4 other sisters and a brother. So there were 3 sisters and a brother that were older than him, and then Charles, and then the youngest child was his sister. And he actually was baptized in an Anglican church by his dad, who sort of figured, well, you know, it leaves doors open. We just kind of get him baptized, and then we go back to doing our Unitarian thing, so it doesn't really matter. And if he wants to go do this later on or do something, it won't be that big of a deal. One of the things that, and this is sort of me projecting here, one of the things that I feel like Robert might have been doing when he did this was, you wanted your kid's name on a roll, right? And exactly, yeah, he wouldn't have had a chance to pursue the career that Robert wanted for him, especially medical school. You sort of had to be Anglican. You kind of had to be in the world, right? So if you weren't on the roll, and this wasn't like they're going to discriminate against you point blank, but it was understood, right? This was kind of a wink and a nudge that if you weren't in the group, you weren't in the group. The Beagle Book is amazing. Funny, fun, multiple instances of incredibly sad and tragic events. That sounds accurate. Your philosophical background is pragmatism. Very cool. Which brings Darwin and evolution into understanding ethics and knowledge. Oh, super, Unreal Brian. So you actually were asking about utilitarianism there. You were talking about, like, John Stuart Mill utilitarianism, and I just thought you meant Unitarianism, and I apologize for that. So I didn't mean to put words in your mouth there. I don't actually know what Darwin would have looked at on a philosophical level. I don't know if he was more of a utilitarian, or, you know, something like a pragmatist, or something like I don't know, Platonist or Aristotelian. I think he might have gravitated. So the problem with me saying that he would have been a utilitarian is his views, especially about race, and this is sort of getting ahead of us, but it's okay because it fits right here. He later on has a lot of ideas about how races interact with each other, and a lot of the utilitarian ideas that were around at his time had been pretty heavily influenced by Kant, and Kant had a whole bunch of really negative views on races that I don't feel like Darwin would have agreed with. So I don't think he would have been fully into the kind of utilitarian camp, but I do think he might have looked at some of that as good ideas, especially the larger concept of how the overall goal of a society or of a thought process or something like that should be working towards efficient and proper function. I do think something like that would have potentially influenced the way that he thought about stuff like evolution or the function of different what we might call adaptations or something like that. So I don't know if he could have gone fully over into that camp, but this is again purely me speculating. Purely me speculating. I don't actually know what his personal philosophy was. You know that Russell was taught into all that a bit later. Yeah. That's absolutely true. That would have been. If they were alive at the same time, it would have been towards the end of Darwin's life. Yeah, he absolutely did not like slavery. The stuff that he saw in South America kind of turned his stomach. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Let's look at a picture of cute kid Darwin. Here's cute kid Darwin. Look at him holding a plant because, you know, he liked nature. He's actually a precocious kind of kid. He got into a lot of trouble. And he didn't always follow the rules. In fact, he didn't really pay a lot of attention to his schoolwork, which was very unfortunate because his dad had highest of hopes. He ends up, unfortunately, when he is 9, losing his mother. His mother died when she was in her early 50s, and this kind of had a big effect on Charles because he had never really had what you might call a close relationship with his father. He was actually somewhat closer to his grandfather than he was his father. And that's going to be a big shock when his mom dies. He needs a tiger named Hobbs, absolutely. So this is actually a chalk image. It's not painting, but it's actually really pretty. And I find all these on Wikimedia Commons because I try not to show pictures that are going to get me blown up for, issues. So, closer to his grandfather than his father. That's not how evolution works, right, Moose? Good to see you. And Moose, thank you again for your chat yesterday. I appreciate the feedback. I really do. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate that. So he ends up getting sent to boarding school, and he's going to kind of get along a little bit at boarding school, but he really only scrapes by with a lot of the grades. He gets into a lot of kind of mischief. He really likes playing around with bugs and plants and stuff like that instead of paying attention to math. He really only gets to apply to medical school because his dad and his family is so important and well known, and he kind of scrapes into medical school because his granddad kind of told him, you're going to go to medical school. But when he gets to med school, he goes to Edinburgh Medical School, and he gets there in 1825. And he just loves playing with bugs, right? He just wants to play with the bugs. He's a Nepo baby. He is. He's a Nepo. He really is. He really is. But it doesn't really save him because his grades are horrible. He ends up joining a school club, and this is something that is way more active, I think, in these 1900s British university worlds. These specific clubs that actually get a lot of support and have a lot of influence and have a lot of connections socially, that the faculty are very active in. And he gets involved in the Natural History Club. And this is actually going to sort of flick on a light for him where he's like, oh, holy crap, I can actually learn about just stuff about the world, and I can learn about bugs, and I can learn about biology, and I can learn about comparative anatomy. And there's a guy that shows up after a little while of him being at school, a little while of Darwin being at school, that teaches him how to do taxidermy, which he takes to with relish. So he will go out and kill stuff just to stuff it, right? Because he wants to, kill it and then dissect it and then stuff it. And this is kind of his pastime. He's the weird taxidermy guy, right? So Ellen Sharples was that painter. Cool. England did run on nepotism. And he didn't like the human stuff. He found out he got to the point where he was starting to do rounds where he had to go work with human patients, and he hated it. He passed out during the first time that he was watching surgery. He got really queasy every time people bled or puked. He really did not like the stuff. He didn't like the human anatomy stuff that much. He wanted to go play with animals, and he was always way cooler than that. So, his dad, after 3 years of medical school, when he should have been, when Charles Darwin should have been getting ready to graduate, Robert found out how bad his grades were, and Charles goes home. I think it's either like summer break or Easter break or Christmas break or something like that. And Robert just gives him a dressing down of how horrible he's been and how he's wasting all these opportunities that his family had worked hard to give him, and how all of these things were just being thrown back in the family's face, And he sends him off to a new college. He sends him to Christ College at Cambridge, and says, if you're not going to be a doctor, then you're going to be a preacher, because that's what we're here for. One of the two. We're going to save people, or we're going to save souls. And like, this is really going to make it so much better, right? We're going to take them away from even any kind of science and just tell them, go be a preacher. The neighbor who was nice but always kept it to himself, right? Right? You probably thought that fox was alive. Nope, Chuck Darwin. He also liked eating every new species he discovered. Eris, welcome in. Good to see you. That actually tends to be something that is common with a lot of naturalists, because that's also something that Charles Audubon did. As he was traveling around North America finding birds, he would shoot all of the birds and then eat them. And a lot of the birds, especially down in the southern part of America and in the eastern part of America, have these ridiculously horrible names, and can only be identified by these names if you are holding the dead version of the bird, right? Because if they're just up in a tree, you can't tell what that bird is, right? Because there's no way to tell the difference. But Audubon shot the bird and then had it in his hands and then ate it, and was like, oh, this is a red-bellied woodpecker. And if it's on the tree, you can't tell it's a red-bellied woodpecker, right? Because it doesn't have a red belly. But if you get it like ring-necked duck, it's only got a ring on its neck after, right? It's got this tiny little thing, right? Crunchy-winged warbler. Wow. That's something like that, right? Yeah. There were scientific preachers, but this is my joke was that Robert was sending Charles further away from what Charles wanted to do, right? And this is not going to go very well for Charles, and he's actually going to end up ignoring that too. So he's going to end up kind of skiving off on his lessons and studying botany and entomology with some of his friends instead. Because, that's what you do if you don't want to be a preacher either. So he's not a good student, and ends up sort of washing out of Christ College as well. So not the best of times for our buddy Darwin. Let's see. Ringneck duck. Yeah, crunchy. What is Latin for bird that tastes like chicken leg? So bird is avis, but if you pronounce it Latin, it's supposed to be avis because you don't pronounce the V like that. You say it like a W. Bird. So bird that tastes like chicken. So to taste is gustar. Not gusti. No. So it would be it taste. Bird. It would be gustat. Always que gustat. You have to, this. It's the stupid nouns. It's the declension of the nouns that always messes me up because we don't do this in English because they decided to go with German noun forms instead of Latin noun forms. I think it's pullum. I think it would be avis que gust. Avis que gustat pullum. Bird that tastes like chicken. Oh, secret, because it has to be like. Yeah, pullum. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's those friggin' declensions that get me. Yeah. So maybe it's avis que gustat sicut pullum. Yeah, I think that would be it. So I see gustibus is that would be like you taste like chicken. No, we do this all. So people ask me questions in Latin, and I don't get a lot of Latin questions. And when they come up, I typically give them way too much attention because I probably need to practice my Latin more. I really haven't used it academically in a long time. I had to learn that for my master's in history. I had to pass a translation exam where my professor gave me a paragraph out of a random. I ended up getting Caesar's Gallic Wars. I got a paragraph out of Caesar's Gallic Wars, and had to translate it. So, yup. Gallic Wars is good, and I was gracious that he chose Gallic Wars because when Caesar wrote Gallic Wars, he wrote it for basically the common idiot people that were with very small vocabularies back in Rome because it was purely a popularity thing. So anyway, let's avis que gustat sucut pullum. I think that's right, Tuna. You can dump that in Google and see if it gives you bird that tastes like chicken back out of it. Oh, did it show back up? I'm going to feel kind of decent if it did. Makes me think of the centurions in full gold and red costumes emerging through the astral cornfields discovered. Yeah. So like they're just kind of like, if you build it, they will invade. Right. You got De Legibus on your nightstand? Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get back on Darwin because he's not even an adult yet, and we're almost halfway through with our time. Okay, so By the time we get to 1831, Darwin has now washed out of 2 colleges and doesn't really have a lot of prospects. And his dad is ticked because, you know, at this point, what you gonna do, boy? You know, how you gonna provide for a family? How you gonna, you know, how you gonna do anything if you don't have a job and you don't have any prospects, you don't have a degree, and you don't want to do what we've tried to get you to do? And young Charles is like, I want to sing. No, he's like, I want to play with my bugs, which is actually kind of what he wanted to do. And he's got a buddy. You can't just live on Wedgwood royalties alone. You probably could, though. You probably could. Anyway, Darwin has a buddy that he met from all of his naturalist stuff. And his buddy knows a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy that's about to set off on a trip on this boat called the HMS Beagle. And they have a spot for a naturalist on the ship. Here's the thing, though. It's not a paid spot on the ship. It is a self-funded spot on the ship. So, if you're going to go, you can kind of hang out and you can, you know, eat with the crew and you can go to where we're going to go, but you've got to pay for it yourself. And Robert's first response, again, this is Charles's father, says, no, ain't gonna happen. I ain't gonna send you on this. I've already wasted too much money on you. There is no way I'm spending more money on you. And it actually takes the in-laws, the Wedgwoods, kind of pitching in, going, look, there's actually a chance that this could be good for him because there's a lot of interest in this kind of stuff right now. And to be fair, there was a lot of interest in this. You know, this early 1800s, this is, again, 1831. There was a lot of interest in travel stuff, especially books written about travel. There's a lot of interest in the different parts of the world. This is sort of the beginnings of what becomes the larger flush of naturalism, Orientalism. This is the beginning of archaeology and all of these new fields where we're going to go and explore things. This is the beginning of sociology. This is a lot of active time period. Like, one of the people that Darwin hangs out with is Harriet Martineau, who's a really, really important figure in early sociology. Right. So they end up convincing Robert to fund the trip. And the trip is, again, it's supposed to be 2 years. Just 2 years. And we're going to just, you know, make a little bit of a trip. We're going to go float around for a little while. We're going to hang out. We're going to do our jobs. And we'll be back 2 years tops. Right? Charles did what every teenage kid does. He goes whining to his uncle. Yes. These formative travels in Richardson's bio of William James. Yeah. He went on a trip to the Amazon when he was trying to find his way to life. It was very formative. The same sort of thing happened with people like Teddy Roosevelt, who we've talked about before on stream. A lot of these people that had money and support and background took this wanderlust and kind of turned it into personal fuel for themselves. So that actually was something that is not necessarily what I would say super common, but it was absolutely something that was in a vogue at that time. You know, it was almost like your rich kid rite of passage to go off and try to rough it and make it on your own. And I've written a story about that. That's a short story. It's called The Destroyer, that takes place right around the same time but anyway, that's a whole other thing. It gets weird and it has cannibals in it. But the Beagle. Here's the path. We're going to leave. We're going to come down this way. We're going to go around South America. We're going to go to the Galapagos. We're going to make some stops over here in Australia. We're going to come across in the Keeling Islands over here, float around, hit Cape Town, back over here, back up, boom. 2 years tops. Tops. It weren't 2 years. It was long. It was really long. He's going to have a lot of stuff. And honestly, I could have probably done an entire stream just on the stuff that he did in the next 4 years, because it actually turned into 4 years. But as a way to try to condense his life down, I kind of hit the high points. And yeah, spoiler alert. One of the things that's really important is this. And you're like, okay, it's a bird. Yeah, it is a bird. Now, this is a South American ray. And specifically, it is Darwin's. It's named after Darwin. Technically, it's called the lesser, but people refer to it as Darwin's. Now, strike fear to the Australians. Why is this particular bird such a big deal? Well, without going into the entire history of what natural biology looked like at the time, there was a prevailing theory that all animals on Earth were created being important, to fit perfectly in their own natural habitat. So, every species was supposed to be unique, and that species was supposed to be unique to their habitat. So, the designer or the creator made these beings, put them in this specific location for this specific reason, and then let them go about doing their business because they were perfect for it. Right, and they're not supposed to go extinct. They're just supposed to do this forever because they're perfect for this area. Now, when Darwin gets to South America, specifically when he gets to Argentina, at that time, the region broadly known as Patagonia, they were all still drunk when designing Australia. We'll get there. We'll get there. Darwin finds this bird species, and he only ends up being able to study one of them because one of his shipmates kills it and eats it. Anyway, he has to go sort of looking for these. And when he finds these birds, these rays, he finds that there are two different species. There's a greater and a lesser, and they live in the same habitat. And this doesn't jive with the way that things are supposed to work, because each species is only supposed to be fit for its own habitat. But now we have one habitat but two species that are doing the same thing, and they're overlapping, and that sort of sends a jolt through his brain, and he's like, something is different, and I don't know what it is yet, and I haven't put my finger on it yet. But it can't just be one species created specifically for one habitat and that's it. There's something else going on here. And this big bird it's actually not very big. It's maybe 1.5 meters tall. It's not as big as an ostrich or even an emu. I'm greatly simplifying this entire whole situation. There's a whole bunch of stuff with geology and him looking at volcanic rock that's right on top of obviously stuff like seafloor layers with seashells in them, and we're having to kind of skip over a lot of this stuff because we just don't really have time. But then he gets around to the Galapagos, and these are islands that are really going to throw off his whole concept. He had already started hypothesizing this idea that land sort of moved. And this was an idea that had some traction. The field of geology was getting a lot more credible during this period of time. This is before we had the full organized theory of plate tectonics, which we have today, which explains how the plates in the crust move around on the surface, and this is how, like plates will move each other around, and this rises and lowers things based on where the plates are going and things of that nature, right? He had already sort of kind of figured out stuff like this stuff, right? Yes, move like the turtle moves, right? Move like the turtle moves. The turtle does move, right? So says Terry Pratchett. But these Galapagos Islands are really going to mess with him because they're obviously new. As in, the material that they're made out of is younger than a lot of the other stuff around it. So he's like, wait a second, where did this come from? Like, where did these islands even originate from in the first place? Because they're so far out in the middle of nowhere. And he is sort of doing a lot of this kind of hypothesizing and guessing, like, oh, this could be volcanic stuff, or this could be rising at the floor, and who knows how old this is or how young this is, what's going on with all these things. And then he runs into this guy. This is a San Cristobal mockingbird. And you're like, okay, who cares? Darwin did. Darwin cared so much. He gets to the Galapagos in 1835, and he sees this mockingbird on the first island, and he goes, wait a second. This mockingbird looks very, very similar to the mockingbirds that are on the mainland back over in places like Chile and Peru. And if that mockingbird is over here and it has slight differences, how did those differences show up? Did those birds fly all the way out to these islands? Did God make these islands different? I mean, I care too, Green Herring. This is fascinating, and I love being able to show birdie pictures. Burb. Cue dumb. Yeah, exactly. The Mockingbird song. Correct. Anyway. And what he ends up doing is finding these little mockingbirds. And he finds one on the next island that's a little bit different, and one that's on the next island that's a little bit different. And he starts going, okay, look. I really feel like what happened here is that some of these mockingbirds flew over from the mainland, and then they landed on one of these islands. And they got pretty comfortable on one of these islands. And then some of them moved to another island. And then they got kind of comfortable over there. But because these mockingbirds lived on this island in this kind of habitat, and those mockingbirds lived on that island in that habitat, something started happening that pulled these new species apart from each other. And he really kind of figures out, like, oh, there's some tree splitting off going-y things here, right? This is the origin of natural selection, where a species is going to figure out how to best live in its environment because the environment is going to test it, and then you end up talking about alleles and population genetics and genetic drift and all of these fancy things, but that's way later on. He just knows that there's something going on here, and he starts seeing this in the mockingbirds. He sees it in the tortoises of the region, but this is a super famous picture. He also sees it in the finches, right? Because these finches are pretty much all the same bird, but he's like, look, some of these have bigger beaks, and some of these have more developed jaw muscles, because honestly they need it. These ones over here are going to be like more catchy flyy stuff, and these ones over here are going to be more cracky seedy stuff. But they're kind of the same guy, and we're not necessarily super far away from this stuff. I'm being visited by a puppy. You all want to see a puppy? You want to come see me? You come over here. Come over here. I can't see you if you're behind me. She's making herself presentable. You want to come over here? Hey, what are you doing? Come and see me. Come over here. stop licking your leg. You gotta stop. Come here. The puppies. Everybody wants to see the puppy. Come on. Oh yes, there's the puppy. There's the Kaylee Poo. Let's slip the puppy of war. Oh yes, there's a puppy. Hello, Kaylee Poo. Hello. Hello. You have evolved an extra long tongue for giving lots of puppy slobbers. Oh yes. Oh yes. So many puppy slobbers. Oh my goodness gracious. What you doing? Oh, more slobbers. Okay. Okay. Goodness gracious. It's a good girl. Ugh. I am now inundated with puppy slobber. Ugh. Ugh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. That was Kaylee. For all of you who might be new to the stream, fun trivia. Shane talks to his students the same way he talks to the puppies. Not usually. My cats just lick your hand rather than your face. Yeah, I probably should not let the puppy lick my face, but honestly, she's got a limited life. You might as well just let her have fun with it, right? I'll live longer and I'll be okay. Foggage, I see you sneaking in there. Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. Evolve for maximum drool transfer. Exactly. It's exactly correct. It's exactly what it is. I probably couldn't untrain her now anyway. Not that I would necessarily even want to. She's a pretty decent dog, if I'm just being honest. I have been around dogs that are way worse than she is. So, the Galapagos are very important for Darwin. He sees all these different species. They're inside of their own little habitats. He starts working on all these ideas. And then he gets to Australia. And he's like, what the heck is a platypus? Something is jacked up. What the devil are all of these marsupials doing over here? How are they just here and nothing else is here? Like, what is going on with this place? And it kind of blows his brain up. And he also doesn't really like the people there very much. But, like, what the crap is a platypus? And he sees this thing and he's like, no. No. Right? Imagine seeing a platypus for the first time, right? To be fair, that's a good response to everything in Australia. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of people that are viewers of the stream from Australia and are delightful individuals. And people that I get happy to see in the chat. So I have no problem with the Australians. We've actually done a history of Australian colonization. It was a pretty good stream. So, good times. Now, he gets back in 1837, which is a little bit later than what he said he would. And he ends up moving to London. The whole time that he was on this trip, he was collecting specimens, and he was also shipping back specimens. For example, fossils that he had found, birds, tortoises, animals, anything that he could put his hands on, bugs. And he was shipping all of this stuff back to England because this was sort of the thing that you did, right? And he found himself with this giant pile of species to be cataloged, and he didn't really have time to do it, and especially he didn't have the resources to do it, because again, the only reason he went on the trip in the first place is because Daddy paid for him to go on the trip, and he himself had effectively no money. This is when he's going to run into a buddy, and this is a guy that ends up helping him out quite a bit. This guy's name is Charles Lyell, and he was a really influential member of the Royal College of Surgeons. And specifically what this is going to offer Darwin is storage and space to do work. You got to have a lab, you've got to have utensils, you've got to have a place to put all these things. You need certain groups of people to help you do things like catalog, research. You need people to be able to run errands for you and stuff like that. And Lyell's going to be very influential in helping Darwin get some space, get some work zone, and start working through this big backlog of specimens. And it's also going to be interesting or important rather, that Lyell is also going to be sort of a sounding board, because Darwin had all of these ideas that were sort of gestating and percolating in his head, and he had never really figured out how to organize them into what he might consider publishable or defensible positions. So he's going to start trying to figure out how to get his thoughts organized, but he's also going to need to make money, because, again, Dad was the meal ticket, and he wasn't making any income of his own. So this is when he's actually going to start working on the books of his journals that cataloged the journey of the HMS Beagle. So he's going to write several volumes of this book. The first one is published in 1838, and this is actually going to start making him some money, but he actually works himself to the point of being sick. And this is, to his family, a rather remarkable moment. If you could see it from their point of view, he had been a kind of a goofy kid that didn't really take a lot of things seriously. He hadn't made very good grades in school. He had squeaked into college because Granddad. He had done really badly at the surgeon school. He had done really badly at Christchurch. He had never really shown any sort of drive to do anything. But here he is working on this book to the point where he literally gets so sick that he has to basically stay in bed for a week because he had worked himself into the point of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, like lethargy or something like that. But he was in pretty bad shape. But these books are going to start making him some income, and he appreciates that, and he's in a good mood because of this. And he's going to start being able to read more and be a little bit more active in the academic world. And he's going to start reading some works that start, I don't know, influencing is the right word, but it's not necessarily the correct word. He's going to start reading a lot of existing theory. And while he reads the existing theory, he starts using that to hone his own theory. So it's sort of like looking at something that exists and then describing how your idea isn't that. And that's inspiration, but it's also not really the same sort of inspiration that you might think of when, you know, an apple falls on somebody's head and they go write a theory about gravity, right? It's, I don't think your ideas are accurate. I think my ideas are accurate, and here's why. And Thomas Malthus and a lot of the work of that guy, is this where Darwin plagiarized his theories came from? Yes. This period of time where he is working on formulating his own ideas is when he starts looking at a lot of other people and a lot of other works where he's going to find pieces of their ideas that he goes, okay, this piece of your idea is correct. Your overall idea is wrong, but this piece of your idea is correct. And here's how your piece is correct because it fits with this piece of this other person's idea. The rest of their other stuff is wrong too. But here's how I'm going to weave these different little elements together to make something that is a cogent narrative. And this is tough, right? The academic world of Britain in the early 1800s was brutal. You didn't just walk out on a stage and go, here's what's right and here's what's wrong, because you got effectively one chance to do that. And if you did it wrong, you were a laughingstock, you were run out of the world, and nobody would ever let you speak again. So you didn't really venture forth until you had everything pretty well locked. This is also when he's going to get married. He is going to marry his first cousin, who is a Wedgwood. This is Emma Wedgwood, who goes on to become Emma Darwin. Yeah, that's true. A lot of these people were what we might call academically incestuous. They had either taught each other, or they were part of the same faculties, or they were part of the same publishing houses, or, again, these big ideological groups where you would have clubs where people would go on Thursday nights or Friday nights, and they would just go hang out with other academics and talk about ideas. So it wasn't necessarily like, I mean, it did get very ugly sometimes because some of these personal, also literally incestuous, right? When it comes to, marrying your first cousin and then having 10 kids with her. By the way, Darwin has 10 kids with his first cousin. Yeah, exactly. The good academics copy, but great academics steal. So what's really interesting about this is the Wedgwoods weren't really down with the whole Unitarian thing, and while he couldn't even really commit to asking her to marry him. The way that he finally decided to ask her to marry him was he talked a little bit about his ideas, and when she didn't immediately say, I can't be around you because you're stupid, he was like, okay, you can hang out. She did think he was going to hell, though. She was worried that when he died, he was going to go to hell because of all of his stuff. That the Unitarian part of it was there. Also, by this point, he had started being less active in church. Yeah, exactly. Like Newton, when he published his idea of light, it could get dirty. The academic world could get very backstabby, right? So, when did it become wrong to marry your cousin, at least outside of the United States? Hey, aren't you all about to crown a new king over there, DCI? And if I'm not absolutely mistaken, weren't his parents cousins? So maybe a little bit of pot calling kettle black here, maybe. Just as a note, as I sip my tea. There's a law in the next state over. You can marry your first cousin here in the United States, so it's fine. The relationship between Charles's parents is greater than legal relationships that can happen right next door to me. Eleanor Roosevelt was FDR's cousin too. So I mean, you keep it in the family, right? Arkansas still exists. Alabama has the least restrictive marriage laws in the United States. Again, you can marry your first cousin. It's actually really ridiculous how lax a lot of the marriage laws in America are. The majority of the states do not have requirements for a child to be an adult to get married. Up until about either the late 90s or the early 2000s, you could get married in my state at 13 with your parents' approval. 13. Bubba World Comics. Hey, how's it going, man? Good to see you. Yeah, you married your cousin or not at all. There's a lot of cousin marrying in the Middle East. Like in Iraq, it's actually considered way better to marry a cousin than it is to marry somebody from outside of the family, because the family takes care of each other, and other people outside of the family don't. Right? So there's a there's a lot of stuff that goes on, right? And we could get into the sociology of marriage, and I teach a whole class on this called Marriage and Family. So, been preparing for Free Comic Book Day in Biloxi this Saturday. Oh, that is this Saturday, isn't it? Man, I haven't been to a Free Comic Book Day in 6-ish years. Yeah. We could go back in archaeological times or anthropological times and point out a whole bunch of cousins, because the human race wasn't that big back then. Anyway, back to Darwin. He gets married to his cousin. He has 10 children, and the second child and the third child die very young. His second child, his first daughter, named Anne, dies when she's 10, and that's kind of the end of him going to church, because he got very angry with the whole situation. And then his third child, Mary, died before she was even 1. And that was kind of like effectively the nail in the coffin for... that was a very bad pun to use for a child's death. Very tasteless of me to say that. That was the end of Darwin going to church, basically. And yeah, poor taste for me, right? I didn't even think about that before I said it. Anyway, he started writing a lot more. He started focusing on kind of honing this concept of natural selection, and he wrote a paper where he described natural selection and gave it to some of his friends that were academics, and was supposed to give this paper in front of an academic crowd, but his 10th child was in the process of dying from scarlet fever when he was supposed to go give this paper. So his friends actually gave the paper and published the idea without Darwin actually being there. And the first paper that he wrote about natural selection actually sort of fizzled out. It didn't really get a whole lot of response, because he was kind of a nobody, right? I have not seen the film Creation with Paul Bettany. Is it any good? Yeah, I know that Elizabeth and Philip were cousins. That was just a polite, full, like, wink, 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 wink. No cousin weddings on Saturday. Yeah, well, you never know. It is Mississippi, so you never know. It might actually be interesting to go do that, Bubba. I will consider that. We'll see what the rest of this week looks like. It's the last week of the term, so there's a whole lot of paperworky kind of stuff that has to go down, right? Oh, you don't know if it was any good. You were 14. Hey, I understand that, Animal Chin. I get it. I watched movies. I made my wife sit through Hackers the other day, because in my brain, when I first saw it when I was in high school, it was this epic story of the little guy versus the man. And we watched it again, and it was not good. No, it's not great. It was just not good. It was so bad. I mean, Hack the Planet is great, and Acid Burn is great, and the names are great, but the really, really bad VR and the random clicking of keys, and oh my gosh, it's just so bad. Anyway, I should try Sneakers. I've seen Sneakers before. I don't know if my wife has seen Sneakers. And Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu next, right? Anyway, so the first paper doesn't go over with very much of a bang. Darwin doesn't get a whole bunch of love from it. He gets a little bit of attention. Some people push back about it a little bit, but it's ultimately kind of a fizzle. I think that's the best way to say it. Like, he gets very little attention from it. But he takes the fact that he wasn't laughed off the stage, because he didn't actually give it anyway, but, he takes the fact that he wasn't universally castigated for the concept as good enough sign to continue on work. And he's going to write his most famous book, The Origin of the Species. This comes out in 1859, and this is... I've got pictures that I didn't show you. Here's Darwin and his first kid, his son. What's the next photo? Oh, yeah, there's Monkey Darwin. All right, so we'll pick that up in just a second. So, Origin of the Species gets published in 1859 in November, and he had a lot of debate. No, that's not a death photo. It's just very odd. Darwin actually commented on how weird he looked and didn't like the way that he looked. So the fact that we have as many pictures about him as we thought, or as we do, is kind of interesting, because he really, really didn't like the way that he looked in photos. But one of the big debates about Origin of the Species is he going to include the concept of human evolution in Origin of the Species? And he decided against it. So the Origin of the Species doesn't actually have any sort of direct reference to human evolution. There's some hints at it if you know where to look. But what's really interesting, that I always like to point this out when I talk about Darwin in class, or the history class or sociology class, he gets remembered today for writing The Origin of the Species. But that book wasn't actually the one that caused most of the arguments. When The Origin of the Species came out, there were actually people both inside and outside the academic world, and inside and outside the religious world, that liked it. That were perfectly fine with it. It was popular. It sold a lot of copies, but it wasn't really that controversial. Now, some people, of course, got very, very mad at it, but there were people within the religious groups of England and then the wider sort of world that said, this is just God sort of carrying the species out. So this is the beginning of what today we would call the concept of intelligent design. That evolution just happened because this is the way that God wanted it to happen. And God was using the same tools and shaping the animals the way that he needed to. So this happening over time actually makes sense, because the creation was in phases over the course of days. So this doesn't necessarily directly contradict the whole biblical account of origin, stuff like that. So, I took this stream for me to realize the name of... There you go, Tad. There you go. It's okay. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get a little bit, right? But what this does do is it puts him on the map. And Darwinism as a term is going to be a buzzword for the academic community even until today, right? We still talk about Darwinism. It's not really until 1871 when he really gets a lot of this stuff going. Now, he publishes another book about plants in 1868, but in 1871 he publishes a book called The Descent of Man. This is the one that really hacks everybody off, because he is going to bring all of his concepts about natural selection, sexual selection, and evolution to bear on the species of man. And this is when he says that man is just an evolved species. This is when he's going to say that we're going to effectively change from a common ancestor between apes and end up the way that we are now. He's going to argue that there's not really a biological basis for race, that we're all the same rough species. Now, he does allow for cultural evolution by saying that clearly some humans are what he would call civilized and uncivilized. These are, of course, people that lived in cities versus people that were still rural. The scent of man, we just stink, right? The reference to sneakers reminded me of Matthew Perry's comments about Keanu Reeves, saying how Keanu is still alive, but River Phoenix is not. Yeah, Matthew Perry retracted that, and in his book tried to get them to publish a new version with a retraction in that, and apologized for that publicly, and said that he hadn't actually run into Keanu to apologize to his face yet, but as soon as he did, he would. So, stupid thing to say, hands down. But big of Matthew Perry to admit that it was wrong, and then actually say that he would like to talk to Keanu about that directly. The descent of man is the big one, and this is what causes stuff like this. This is a political cartoon, of course, where you put Darwin's head on the body of an ape. This is where a lot of people start getting very, very angry, very upset. This is going to bring some of the bigger responses, and the descent of man is actually wider red than the origin of the species. And it definitely produces much more avid and vocal anti-responses. So while the modern idea is that the origin of the species was the big one that everybody got angry about, I mean, people did get angry about the origin of the species to an extent, but the really big one that everybody freaked out about was the descent of man. Now, that's going to put Darwin sort of beyond the map. At this point, he's making a substantial sum of money. He doesn't really have to worry about income. And for the rest of his life, he's just going to sort of work on projects that he wanted to work on. And he's going to focus on whatever sort of strikes his fancy. Now, he does still have some of these grand scheme ideas that he is going to work on publishing. And he does publish a lot of other stuff after this. He publishes another book on it's called the Expression of Emotions in Man and Animals, and this is in 1872. This book is where he actually sort of branches all the way back to his granddad Erasmus, who had published some books about kind of like early psychological theory, where he's going to bring a lot of this stuff that his granddad was talking about all the way back when Charles was a little kid to meet with his theories, and he's going to talk a lot about psychology. This particular book is a big influence on early sociology, and it's going to be read by a lot of people like George Herbert Mead in America, who is going to be basically the father of American sociology. This is kind of how I know so much about this particular book. This is going to be read by Freud and influences him. There's a lot of influence that comes out of the expression of emotions, because Darwin's going to hypothesize that a lot of the emotions that we have as humans are actually evolutionary adaptations to working inside of a social system. And that's a really kind of a crazy idea. Like, why do we do what we do emotionally speaking, right? Like, how are our emotions similar to emotions in other comparable animals, right? Like, why do we do what we do? And it's a fascinating book. This is actually I've not read all of The Descent of Man or all of The Origin of the Species, but I have read this one, which is kind of weird because this one gets basically no love outside of the academic world. He writes a bunch of books on 3 more books on plants. He's going to really focus a lot on stuff like the concept of natural selection. One of the last book on plants that he writes is about plants that have evolved things like no, or which one is that? I probably shouldn't have said the last one. One of the books that he writes about plants is specifically about stuff like Venus flytraps and pitcher plants, plants that eat animals, basically, which is pretty cool. And one of them is about plants that can move, which is pretty neat. But this is all sort of furthering his concept of natural selection, that these particular capabilities of these plant species are developed as a way to make themselves the most fit inside of their environment, and that's how they survived. His last book is published in 1881, and it's called The Formation of Vegetable Mold Through the Action of Worms. And you go, oh wow, that's a fascinating read. This is actually something that he had been thinking about all the way back before he got on the Beagle. This idea that worms created dirt, and that soil and dirt is from the action of worms. And so this was kind of like a pet project that he had been sitting on at this point for like 30 something years. No, longer than that. Like maybe even 50 years. And he finally published it the year before he died. Here is a photo of Darwin, one of the more famous photos of Darwin, not too long before his death. He died on April the 19th, 1882. Of heart failure. So, pretty interesting guy. What's up, Dame Karen? Good to see you. Yeah, carnivorous plants, indeed. He wrote a book about it, and it came out in the early 1870s. I think maybe 1874. I'm not 100% certain. Don't quote me on that. But that's our boy Darwin, and I hope that through the course of the discussion, this has sort of put some of the different pieces of how he came up with his ideas together and made it a little bit more obvious of his ideas and his concepts. I do think that he had a really interesting and really fascinating life. A lot of the stuff that he went through, I feel like I kind of went through as well, especially with the massive expectations and then not necessarily going the way that the family wanted you to go, and ending up going off on a field that is sort of not necessarily super lucrative but passionate about. I knew that when I picked history major, I was never really going to be a bajillionaire. I've yet to write my magnum opus that's going to get me a whole bunch of money, so I guess I'll still have to wait on that. But now I could just plug it into AI and get it to spit one out for me, right? I wonder how Darwin's dad would feel about the fact that the only reason people know his name is because his son was such a big that's a fascinating question, Frank. His dad lived long enough for Darwin to get a little bit of popularity, but not necessarily much. So his dad never really saw Charles at the height of Charles's popularity. I would like to think that he would have initially reacted with a gruff sort of exterior of, but then over time would have realized that his son was actually contributing quite a bit to the fields that he was participating in, and kind of came around begrudgingly. Right? I think that's probably what would have happened had Robert been able to see Charles at kind of the apex of the popularity. An initial grumbling and then a later begrudging acceptance. Most of the history is made up. Hey, that's fine too, right? Everybody kind of lives in their own little world. The origin of Twitch and the descent of streamers. Maybe not the world's bestseller, right? The Cats in the Cradle and the Wedgwood Spoon. Oh man, that's great. Ooh, that's a great question. Herbert Spencer into the house. What would Charles Darwin have thought of social Darwinism? Well, um, Charles Darwin actually had a lot more sociological bent. That's not the right word. Um, for somebody that is thought of as a father and a pillar of hard science, biology, genetics, he was actually way more open and way more comfortable talking about stuff like psychology and sociology, which at the time were both considered sort of soft, not necessarily legitimate, even. Like, sociology was barely off the ground at that point. Um, you had a few people like Martineau did her stuff. The guy that um, really pushes social Darwinism is a guy named Herbert Spencer, and he's the one that really popularizes it and makes it work. And they overlap contemporaneously for a little while. And Darwin knew that some people were taking his concepts and using them in fields outside of the pure sciences, and he was usually okay with that. Darwin's intellectual viewpoint was actually really open, which is sort of ironic to me, and I'm wearing the opinion hat, so I get to say this. A lot of the people that criticize Darwin are way more close-minded than he was. He would have listened to their argument all the way through, where they would have slammed the door in his face. And that always sort of makes me giggle that Darwin would have probably been willing to meet them a lot closer to where they are than they would ever consider to meet him even one step past where they were. Oh yeah, and he was both chops and inclination are good there. Let's see what Maddie's saying. Was a budding anthropologist. Sure, he was a genius at seeing patterns. Absolutely, that's one of his biggest benefits. Is seeing slight deviations in change. He did a lot of cross-cultural comparisons. Correct. Again, in The Descent of Man, he talked a lot about culture. And he talked a lot about how people's ideas are going to move over time, similar to how their traits are going to move over time. And regardless of what that meant in the time, that idea today is basically the root of social Darwinism. A lot of people today, when we talk about social Darwinism, look at this as a very, very negative concept because of what eventually happened with it. A lot of people, of course, are going to use this to transition straight out of cultural Darwinism right into eugenics, right? So if there are just people that are better than other people and there are cultures that are better than other people or other cultures, we should just get rid of the bad cultures and keep the good cultures. And that means get rid of the bad people and keep the good people and breed it out. But social Darwinism itself is... that's a great question, Dame Karen. Let me actually describe this. And I actually talk about this in my sociology class. So, yeah, coordinators. It causes the 1-year war, and there's like space colonies that fall down, and we have people that make up horrible names like Quattro Bagina, So social Darwinism, in its original form, is the idea that our cultures and our societies have evolved from previous cultures and societies. So the ideas that we share today are the descendants of ideas that happened before us. So if we look at stuff like how America changed over time, right? When we look at the modern concept of something like voting. Our ideas about voting are much more open than they used to be, because we have a lot of laws now that have expanded access to voting and protected the rights of voting stuff. But that came from ideas previous. And those two ideas that were sort of their parents were this idea that races should be considered equal and that citizens should get the right to vote. So when those two ideas got together, they created a new idea, which is everybody, regardless of their race, should be able to vote in America. And that's what sort of birthed the voting rights bill. And that's an extent of we could use that as an extension of the concept of social Darwinism, about how these ideas that float around in the metacognition of our society are going to bump into each other. Some of them that are good are going to hang around. Some of them that are bad are going to hang around, but it's all going to be based on choice and selection. Right? The ideas that are going to catch on with the most people are going to be the fittest ideas, and that's how cultures can move. And again, that doesn't also mean that cultures are going to move in the right direction or in the right way. Sometimes cultures are going to move in ways that are negative overall, because the majority of the people, or at least the ones with the most social power, are going to be the ones pushing those ideas. Much more than sure, absolutely. But Moose, if we were looking at the concept of modern voting rights and the challenges that have been facing modern voting rights, and especially things like shutting down precincts and a lot of the laws that are trying to pass in America, this is actually something that we could still apply social Darwinism to, because one of the ideas that survived through the evolution, so this is sort of a multi-species thing, right? If we look at humans, right, when Homo sapiens first showed up, there were 4 or 5 different hominid species on Earth, right? So we have Homo heidelbergensis, who is most likely our most recent antecessor. We have Neanderthalensis, we have Denisova, we have Sapiens, we have Floresiensis, right? So that's 5 different species that are living at the same time. And Sapiens was the one that was the most fit for the situation, and it survived through. But for a time there were a lot of other ideas that were existing continuously in that same chunk. So even though the Voting Rights Act passed, the idea of racism didn't go away. It just sort of moved over. And those ideas can evolve to be more fit over time, just like species can. So one of the things that happened was racism jumped from one political party to another political party. Politically speaking, in general. This is in basically the 50s and into the 60s, when the political parties in America realigned, and a lot of the people that hated anybody that wasn't right stopped voting Democrat and started voting Republican. Because the idea evolved, and it became not just racism as an external thing. No, for it to be more fit, it had to be it had to portray itself as something different. So now we have a lot of Magnificent talks about demagoguery, but that's one of the mechanisms of social Darwinism. We couch the evolution of racism now in stuff like, we want to produce safe elections. And that idea by itself is not a bad idea, right? We want to have elections that are verifiable. We want to have elections that are safe. We want to have elections that are open. But we also want to make sure that those elections are open to everybody. So when you take racism and that idea of we want to have elections that are verifiable, some people go, okay, well, the way to make it verifiable is you've got to require a photo ID to vote. Now, that by itself is an idea that is not necessarily a racist idea, but it is one that is arguably rational and arguably logical. But because that idea is more fit in our society than just overt racism, people that are racist will use that idea as a way to evolve and keep their racist ideas prevalent in a changing society. This is the same thing with a lot of the stuff that's going on now in in the states in America where everybody has decided that they're going to ban transitionary care and stuff like hormone treatment to trans people, right, that are under 18. In most of these states, nobody's getting surgery at 14, right? The number of people that have had like gender reassignment surgery at 14 is like tiny, 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 minuscule. But as a way to carry forward religious ideas that are becoming less impactful in our society overall, you couch those in an idea that is socially much more acceptable, which is, hey, look, 13-year-olds change their mind. That by itself, that statement as a pure fact, if we just go, do 13-year-olds change their mind? Yes or no? The answer to that is obviously yes. Now, that idea is logically unassailable, right? If you've ever been around a 13-year-old, you know that they're going to change their mind. Now, but what they do is they hide that old idea that is not as socially fit under the logical fact that 13-year-olds change their mind. And what they do is say there are doctors out there that are removing organs from 13-year-olds. And people go, well, holy crap, we can't do that because they might not be that way forever. They might change their minds. So this is still social Darwinism happening here. Let me catch up with chat because I'm way behind in chat. Uncanny Valley tie-in. Yeah, so Uncanny Valley is theoretically, and also, hey, Nick Slottle. There's a hypothesis that the Uncanny Valley idea in our brain, where we look at something that's not quite human, or is an image of a human, but there's not something quite right with it, evolved as a way for us to recognize Homo sapiens as opposed to other hominid species, because we were the most fit, and individuals that were going to mate Homo sapiens to Homo sapiens were going to produce more fit offspring. So the idea here is we started figuring out, like, that's not a sapiens, that's a Neanderthalensis, and that's where the Uncanny Valley comes from. So when you look at a photo that's kind of off in the face or kind of off in the proportions, you go, well, that can't be a human, right? Like those little animated bubble charts? Maybe, but I'm not sure. What's up, Tommy? Looking into the future, what current contentious issues do you think would ever flip parties like that again? Wow. I don't know if we'd ever see a party flip like that again. I think what's much more likely to happen is for parties that we have right now to split. And I think that's sort of the natural evolution of American politics. I think that we won't have a party inversion again. We will have a party split, and we'll have a more pluralist society instead of a basically just a kind of two-party structure. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty well. How are you? Hope you're doing well as well. Only 10% of trans people are... Yeah, so it's very, very small percentage. So 10% of trans people will get the surgery, if that's the correct status, or the statistic. I don't actually know that statistic, so I cannot comment on the veracity of that statistic. Moose is a statistician, and if he told me that, I probably wouldn't check him. But that's more my laziness than anything. So I can't endorse that. But hypothetically speaking, if it's only 10% of the population, the percentage of population of America that identifies as transgendered is less than 1% of the population. Now, please hear me when I say this. This is not me trying to denigrate their position. Human beings are human beings and deserve human rights and should be treated like human beings, and that includes decency and the ability to determine who they are as a person. I don't get to determine who anybody else is. I have agency inside of my own brain, and that's as far as my agency goes. I don't get to tell you who you are or anybody else who they are. I get to decide who I am, and everybody else gets to decide that same thing as well. So I'm not trying to belittle or denigrate the trans experience. I'm not a trans individual. I don't know how that feels. I suspect, though, and have guessed, and based on statistics, that it's a pretty tough thing to deal with in the modern society. But the reason I say that the population size is so small is because when we listen to the news, and especially the media in America, the population percentage that they represent by their anger and their loudness is like every other person is a trans individual. But that's not the case. It's a very small percentage of the population that still deserve exactly the same human rights as everybody else, right? It's about 1.3, 1.4 million people in America. So don't hear me saying that because they're a small population they don't have rights. I'm not saying that at all. My point here is the media blows this way out of proportion, and they try to make it bigger because it gets them clicks and it gets them money and it gets them interaction, which is what they thrive off of. And it's expensive, sure. Just like there are doctors performing yeah, exactly. It's the exact same thing, Brittany. This idea that, late-term abortions or partial birth abortions are 90% of the abortions that are done, when there are no partial birth abortions allowed in America at all anymore. And late-term abortions are like maybe 10% of the situation. And in those percentages, it's almost uniformly because of the mother's health. The vast majority of abortions happen in the first trimester prior to the fetus being viable outside of the mother. The vast majority. I think there are several clinics either in Mexico or Caribbean do them. Yeah, that's true a lot as well, Tommy. And just for any sort of medical procedure. Well, sure, absolutely. It didn't stop everything. We still have Neanderthal DNA inside of us, and some people that have Asian history or Asian ancestry have Denisova DNA inside of them. So, I can only picture a Neanderthal man trying to infiltrate a sapiens hunting party. Yeah, like something's not right with the new guy. What's up, Graythor? Good to see you. How's it going? Mention the cost of medical procedures. Tell me you're in the USA without saying exactly, Meg. Right? Like, how much does medicine cost? Yeah, your electoral college doesn't really allow for splitters. Well, I will say this: in America, one of the greatest presidents that has ever been president, according to historians, is Abraham Lincoln, and he won his first term with 37% of the vote, because there were 5 political parties running for president when he won. 37% of the vote, and is uniformly by both political parties considered to be one of the best presidents ever. So it's happened before. I'm Heinrich the non-Neanderthal, right? My state just passed some of the most draconian bathroom access laws in the United States. Maddie, yeah, man, that sucks. There are 3 total in the state, right? Less than 10%. They're all, yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff, right? Just about everybody with European ancestry has at least a little bit of Neanderthal DNA. I have a little bit. And free healthcare doesn't cover cosmetic surgery in most cases. That's true. That's true as well. So DCI, the way that gender reassignment surgery is currently listed in the United States is very, very questionable. I don't know of a single insurance provider in America that would qualify that as a necessary surgery. I think every single one of them that I know of would consider that to be a cosmetic surgery, because the insurance companies in America are going to do whatever they can to pay as little as possible for anything. We have to just get rid of social media. Yeah, if we got rid of social media and 24-hour news, the world would be yes, Lincoln was a Republican. He was. But the Republicans back then are not the same Republicans that they are right now. Yes, Animal Chin, that's what we were talking about. That gender reassignment surgery in America, in the vast majority of places, is considered cosmetic or optional. Yeah, so the party started shifting. It depends on where you are, right? In the South, the Democratic Party hung on to be super racist a lot longer. There's a Democratic Party split. It gets nasty, and we'd have to go into a whole new stream about that. And here's Shane dragging all of it back up. Yeah. So some of the stuff, well, the Southern strategy was a big part of it, where the Republicans decided that they were going to win the South as a way to basically solidify their hold. We're done with Darwin. We've been done with Darwin for about 25 minutes now. We're just chilling. Yeah, we killed Darwin off a while ago. He died in 1882. No, it's good, Animal Chin. It's all good. Yeah, we wrapped up a little while ago. We're just sort of into the chatting phase right now. But we're about to go do a raid. We're going to see who we're going to go raid. See who's around on the webs. Do. Are they up and running? Or are they about to... Are they still coming on? Yeah, we raided Homozygote last week, so which was a great raid, and I'm glad that you all directed me in that direction. Seemed like we've got a lot of alignment. I don't know if Eris is going to be on. I mean, he's not on at the moment. He might come on later. We'll see. Yeah, they've got 10 minutes. We're not going to wait that long. I don't want to wait 10 minutes. Chemistry Rockstar. Who is Chemistry Rockstar? I dig it. We're going to go. Another educator talking about chemistry on stream. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds like a plan. We're going to go raid Chemistry Rockstar. What's up, Freethius? How's it going, man? Hard science? Oh, she's giving TED Talks. That's awesome. Anyway, we're going to go raid Chemistry Rockstar. I've never been over there, but comes highly recommended. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Thank you all again for the massive amounts of positive reinforcement and support that you all offer. You make my days better, and I appreciate you all for that. 10 years ago, high school, Christchurch, Darwin, Cambridge, where Darwin was educated. Yeah, we talked about Christchurch. Portrait in Grand Hall, Oppenheimer, and John Milton. And then Sacha Baron Cohen. Sacha Baron Cohen, that's great. Anyway, yell adventure when we get to Chemistry Rockstar's channel. Share your favorite adventure emote. And I'll see everybody on Thursday, and we'll talk about Japan, which will be a fun time, because I always love talking about Japan. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Chemistry don't need Latin. Well, I don't know about that. But until then, everybody, take it easy. Have a good one.